in February of 2004, I got a call from Lillian Tagato of the California Department of Justice DNA lab, and she told me that they had made a hit on one of our old homicide cases to a guy that was currently in custody in state prison. His DNA related to a 1997 homicide where our victim was LaWanda Beck. I knew that her case was related to Gwen Lee's case because of the ballistics report that said that the same gun had killed both girls. I found out that in 1998 he'd had an argument with his common-law wife, and that the police department had subsequently taken a firearm. And unfortunately, the gun had gotten destroyed in 2002, about a year and a half before I had gotten involved in this case. About, I think it was April 23rd of 2004, I got a call from Tim Nolan from Oakland PD's homicide unit, and he goes, "Hey, we just got a call from DOJ. They got a DNA match between a 1988 homicide victim of ours and William Choyce." I really truly feel that the unsung heroes are the scientists that developed and utilized the DNA evidence, because without that we would have never, William Choyce would have never made it on the radar screen. We would not have known about him at all, because he was not listed as a suspect in any of these cases.
We went to the grand jury with just that information, DNA on 2 of the 3 murders, and it was only after the grand jury indictment that additional work was done by DOJ. They retested some oral swabs that they had collected back at the time of the investigation, and to our surprise, they had a match on the oral swab as well. So now we ended up with DNA on all 3 cases. So the case just got stronger. The detectives who were on the case that saw the bodies agreed the bodies were posed. I mean, Vicki Bell's body, the first victim's body, was posed with her skirt up, her blouse up and her skirt down, and on her back and her knees, her ankles crossed. She was in a position that is not a normal position for someone to be in if they're just dumped out of a vehicle. Vicki Bell, the first one, was found at a platform where trucks coming back up in, what are they called, a truck bay. She was found there next to some trash and some twine. Gwen Lee was found in this pole barn, in this barn out in the country, under a piece of farm equipment. And LaWanda Beck was found again out in the country 1 month later, just about 10 feet off of the country road.
When we got out here, there were 2 or 3 black and white units at the scene. We saw an obviously deceased female in some, I don't know, waist-high grass that was probably just in front of that telephone pole that wasn't there at the time. She was naked. It was obviously she had just been dumped here. It didn't appear that she had been killed here. This area, you know, it's pretty remote, and we've had 2 or 3 other homicides and body dumps out in this area, so it's not unusual. There was a watchman at the business to the north of us on the west side of the street that, you know, actually saw a truck about the time that LaWanda was dumped. Normally, if you have a gunshot wound to the head and it's at the scene, you're going to have a large amount of blood, you know, whether it's coagulated blood or just running blood, because it would sink down into the hard pan here. There wasn't a whole lot of blood at this scene, which, you know, gave us the impression that she'd been picked up someplace, probably shot someplace else and dumped here. It's difficult to tell where these girls, that either they don't have another girl watching out for them or they don't have a pimp that's working with them. We believe that she was working out of that hotel, motel that's kind of right across the street from Medicine High School on South El Dorado or Center Street. It's on both sides of the street, and we believe that potentially that's where she was picked up by Mr. Choyce.
He may have killed one of them in his car because of the testimony of his wife that she cleaned up the car one day and it had all this blood, and Mr. Choyce told the psychiatrist that he actually shot one, the first one, and I think he's saying that he shot Gwen Lee in his vehicle. So he may have shot her in the vehicle, but not the others, because there wasn't any evidence to suggest that. And we had 3 surviving victims, all of whom gave pretty close to the same story about his getting the handcuffs out, his putting the gun against their head, his threatening them. The sex acts were actually quite similar. He probably did the same thing towards the deceased victims, except the deceased victims probably either put up more of a fight or said something like, hey, I'm going to the cops, man, this isn't right, or somehow elevated it up a notch, and that's what motivated Mr. Choyce perhaps to feel he had to not just dump them out, but to kill them.